I will introduce the next speaker, Mr. Bruce Richman. Bruce is a founding executive director of the Prevention Access Campaign, which launched the Undetectable, Equal, and Transmissible campaign, known also as U=U, a global community-driven movement with over 990 official partners and 100 countries sharing a revolutionary but largely unknown fact that people living with HIV on treatment with an undetectable viral load cannot transmit HIV to sexual partners. Bruce?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today to talk about U=U. And during this presentation, I'm going to talk about why U=U is so important and also about how did the community work together to ensure that this groundbreaking science got out to the people that it was intended to benefit. But first, I just want to mention I am an extremely privileged white cisgender male who has stable health insurance and housing and all kinds of support that enable me to get to and stay undetectable. And so many people in many parts of the world do not have the kinds of treatment, care, and support that they need and deserve to get to undetectable. We need to make sure that everyone has that option. So what is U=U? It means that a person who's living with HIV who is on treatment and has an undetectable viral load, which means under 200 copies per milliliter for the purposes of untransmittability, that person cannot transmit HIV through sex. So we stay healthy and we don't have to worry about passing on HIV to anyone. So why is this a game changer? Well, when you think about it, so many people living with HIV, like myself since 2003, never imagined a time when we could love, we could have sex, we could conceive children without fear. Fear had been present in the most intimate moments of our lives. U=U sets us free. It changes our social lives, our sexual lives, our reproductive lives, and it dismantles the stigma that we've been living with and dying from for decades. So it changes the way that we see ourselves, the way others see us, the way we're treated in clinical settings, and the way policy decisions are made about us: housing, healthcare, criminalization, education. And finally, I learned this when I entered the field. I didn't really know what the treatment cascade was, or 90-90-90, but U=U is really important for treatment goals because it reduces the anxiety associated with testing. So more people are likely to get tested, and then if diagnosed, to start treatment and stay on treatment and stay in care for our health and to prevent transmitting HIV to our partners. And finally, this is really important. I'm going to spend some time on this, is the public health argument. And let's just move to the next slide. So what is the public health strategy? So I think we're all aligned with the goal of universal access, which is the third U, because we want to ensure that we increase access and remove barriers to treatment and care and diagnostics. And the argument used to just be, this is for the well-being of people living with HIV, and that should be enough. That should be enough of a reason to make the adjustments in budgets and allocation services. But that may not be enough for some policymakers. They may not be interested in the well-being with HIV, but now we can say, look, if you invest in the well-being of people living with HIV, you get us the treatment and the care that we need, we not only stay healthy, but that stops new transmissions. And that will get us closer to ending the epidemic. So we really need to link ending the epidemic to investing in people living with HIV. If you invest in the well-being with people living with HIV, we stay healthy, we stop new transmissions, and that gets us closer to ending the epidemic. Also, with treatment goals, there was actually some new data that came out that showed that when people living with HIV were informed by their healthcare providers about U=U, they reported greater treatment satisfaction, optimal adherence, and viral suppression. So it's really important. We've had data now to show that it is aligned. So why did we need this campaign? Well, so we know that, U=U, but mostly I think everyone watching this, but in the beginning, not a lot of people were being told about U=U, and they still aren't being told about U=U. And it's especially communities that are already marginalized by healthcare systems and facing all kinds of stigma, racism, transphobia, homophobia. They're not being shared. This information is not being shared with them. We feel that all people have a right to this information, regardless of where you live, where your background is, and what your circumstances. All people living with HIV have this right to information about our bodies. And we know stigma is a public health emergency. Right now, millions of people living with HIV around the world are suffering. They're suffering from social rejection, isolation, depression, suicide, intimate partner violence, prosecution, and murder because they and other people believe they're infectious and they're not. We also know stigma is one of the greatest challenges to ending the epidemic, and U equals U is an immediate and effective response to ending HIV stigma. There are other intersectional stigmas, but when we're talking about HIV stigma, U equals U goes a long way. So what do? We talked to the scientists and we worked on a consensus statement to confirm that U equals U was true because there were so many mixed messages back then. So from January 2016, we worked on this together. The scientists from the major studies were wonderful partners with us. We created a video with the voices of people living with HIV, demanding this information about all of us. And our strategy was to take that statement and the video and our voices and go out and change the narrative about our bodies by engaging influential people and institutions and confirming and joining with us to support what we knew was true. We launched in July 2016, and we were very happy that right around that time, New York City Department of Health signed on as the first city in the world to declare U equals U, and in England, Terence Higgins Trust was launching their campaign and has now become a global leader in U equals U. Also at that time, we started talking to the CDC and NIH and US health departments that we knew would have an influence worldwide if they changed their risk assessment. And fortunately, the relationship at times was heated, sometimes it was difficult, but we really worked together well and came to a place where the CDC and federal health departments updated the risk eventually, I think as most people know. But what happened at that time, the reason that we got here was because of the activists. It was because of this community, this groundswell of people all around the world on every continent that stood up and said, we demand the truth about our bodies. And they were pushing their health ministries, they were protesting, they were marching, they were creating music videos and songs and dancing in the streets to say, we need this information about our bodies. We demand the truth. We did have friends at high places. So Dr. Anthony Fauci, arguably one of the leading immunologists in the world, said the science does verify and validate U equals U in 2017 in public. In partnership with us, Dr. Fauci has been tremendous. He also said the risk is zero because folks were worried about saying zero risk. He kept saying there's no zero risk in science. Dr. Fauci said the risk is zero. People, you've got to say zero. We have to be clear in our communications. So that was tremendous for us. He also said U equals U is the foundation of ending the epidemic. Again, this goes back to that public health argument. Look, if we want to end the epidemic, we need things like PrEP. We certainly need other kinds of condoms and testing, but we need to tell people U equals U. There's a whole cascade of things that happen when you share knowledge about U equals U. And folks start to go on treatment and stay in treatment and stay in care. That's the route to ending the epidemic. And now we have U equals U is verified and multilateral organizations all over the world. WHO back in 2018 made a statement. CDC Global, PEPFAR created this really great toolkits and also countrywide programs. They've invested in countrywide programs in Vietnam and Zambia and Nigeria. Really great, really well thought out programs. And also UNAIDS has been really wonderful supporter, excellent toolkit. So now we have 1,007 community partners growing every day, 102 countries. That's almost half the countries in the world. And it's in all kinds of languages. It's like 35 different languages. It's B equals B in Turkish, K equals K in Vietnam, H equals H in Russia, N equals N in the Netherlands, I equals I in Italian and Portuguese. But I'm going to show you just some important kind of milestones here. You know, we launched in 2016 in the summer, and we were looking for really important, endorsements and sign-ons. And Akaso and Ina in January 20th, 2017, so very early, only about 6 months after we launched, issued a statement, which was then really, heard around the world, and especially in Latin America. So that was really the first endorsement of U equals U and public statement that we saw that was reaching all of Latin America and around the world. And then this video on the right here, I'd like to show you. This was really exciting because this came out in 2016, so not long after, just a few months after we launched. And it's such a clear video, the I equals I video. But what was really genius about it is that Cass and Onicida was using it to encourage testing, so to reduce anxiety associated with testing. This was the first time we saw that. Now we're seeing folks doing that around the world, and there's some data that's coming out that shows U equals U does influence people's willingness to get tested. But CAS and Onicida did this early on. Very early on, which was a big first. And then on the left here, I love this campaign. It was really a body positive campaign from Gay Latino, which was circulated throughout their extensive networks. A bunch of different images, some groups on the left, some groups from young people with HIV from Argentina, the positive groups from Brazil and Venezuela joined early. And then on the bottom right here is, this was a major milestone in the campaign when Brazilian government endorsed I equals I and integrated into the treatment guidelines. This was in May of 2019. The US didn't do this until December of 2019, and most countries hadn't done this yet. So this was really forward for Brazil, and I really can commend you. Also, the other thing is this video on the left was for the oldest indigenous tribe in Venezuela. So when you think about how is U equals U reaching people and is it impacting all of us, this is a country, as you all know, that's facing one of the greatest humanitarian crises of our time, and U equals U and M equals M, I equals I is reaching people, reducing stigma, and really helping people there. The same with China. The program in China is run by young people, young activists and advocates, along with UNAIDS. We just did a conference in China, and then on the far right is the first video or campaign really in the Middle East. Whoops, sorry. And that one is called the Superhero Campaign. Now, I'd actually just like to play some fun things before we end. This is a song from Japan. And this is from Zambia. This is a rock star in Zambia. So the one on the right that just played from Zambia was funded by the government in Zambia, the CDC and PEPFAR. This is a nationwide and all 10 provinces of Zambia, U equals U program, or S equals X, S equals S, sorry. So in closing, I just want to introduce my friend Allison Roger, who was a lead author of the Partner Studies, Partner 1 and 2. This is what she said at the end of her presentation in World AIDS Conference 2018. And I have a cameo here.
There are many providers that are still not accepting this message. They try to focus on the risk is not zero scientifically, or they focus on their patients aren't going to be adherent and they won't know that they're detectable, or they say there's a rise of STIs already, so they don't want to share this with their patients. We get every single kind of excuse. What would you say to clinicians or any other information provider who is withholding this information from people with HIV?
Yeah, and I just want to pay tribute to the U equals U campaign. It's been astonishing. I think the time for excuses are over. I think it's very, very clear that the risk is zero. So I very much think we have to promote this. I think if you're on suppressive ART, you're sexually non-infectious, and yeah, the time for excuses is over.
Well, thank you so much. And here's some ways to get involved. And I hope that everyone who's watching this will have the opportunity to share this message with someone living with HIV, especially for the first time. It's so powerful to see how this brings hope and and changes lives. The first is to join the campaign, and you can join on our website where it says community, and learn the facts. There's lots of information, research on everything related to U=U, and share the great news in a way that reaches the communities you serve. I mean, organizations around the world are reaching every key affected population based across all kinds of identities that so often divide us. This is a chance for you to communicate this to the people that you know and that you serve in ways that will reach and touch them. And finally, we have to remember not to leave anyone behind. We need to use U=U as a public health argument to ensure that all people living with HIV have the access to the information of U=U, but also to the treatment and the care that they need to be able to experience it. Thank you so much.